All right. I think we're live, Tamara.
We are live.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Welcome
I'm
back to
alive.
Hopeful Tribe.
Thank you.
You're alive.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I know. That's the first thing I check every day.
That's right. Is there a pulse still?
Oh my goodness. I should have a new banner made up for people who come back that says "Welcome back to Hopeful Tribe."
Oh, that's nice.
You know, that's really exciting. You are my first return interviewee, and that makes you extra special.
I feel extra special.
Thank
you.
It's so exciting. If you guys haven't been to Tamara's YouTube channel yet, it's called Trauma Free Nation, and it's amazing. If you have been struggling with complex PTSD and aren't getting any recovery, go there. Check it out. Could change your life.
Thank you, Sue.
Sure, no problem. I think part of the beautiful thing about YouTube collaborations is that it's always a win-win. You know, there's always plenty of room for more than one person to be speaking in a niche. You know.
Well, everybody attracts the tribe that resonates with their voice, right?
Right.
So I think that is true, and at the same time, we end up building friendships like this, and so it's good all around. It is really a community. If you think about it, when you and I grew up, there were no computers, personal computers. We didn't have them in our homes, and so I think the idea of creating community with a computer was like this weird idea. But for me, once we started doing like YouTube and having conversations like the ones you and I have, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Like I can say I've got a friend in Australia. I've never met her in person, but we talk like this. Like, and so it does build community.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And I think it makes information more accessible to everyone. Far more than ever before,
Oh yeah. Yeah. I know it used to be you just had to write a book, and now it's be comfortable on camera.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's going to be, the primary tool of learning in the future. So people need to get comfortable with it.
People like us, really, like that.
Well, I feel like I have an unfair advantage because I grew up a performer, and then I became a therapist, and then now I've turned content creator, life coach, right? But I mean, I've always been a performer, so being comfortable on camera, it wasn't a big jump for me.
Well, I tried acting when I was in high school, but I could sing. I had pipes, man. But I'm 6 feet tall. So, and all of the leading men in the musicals I auditioned who had pipes were shorter than that.
Oh man, you weren't gonna get any leads, huh?
No, I kept getting the calls. We love your voice. We want you in our production, but you're too tall. Please join our choir. I'm like, oh, fiddles.
Always in the chorus.
That's right. Yeah. And then in about 2017, I started putting myself on camera in the most awkward ways. And, just like really trying and talking too fast and hyperventilating on camera and thinking I was doing great. And, so for me, it's been like the on camera thing has been, we're in 2021 now, halfway through it. So it's been about 4 years for me where I've been like,
oh, Oh, so you've been practicing a while. So
I have. Yeah. Yeah.
that's how you've gotten there. That's good.
Practice, right? Being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I used to take the same take over and over. I remember my first video that I actually published. It was about 3 minutes long and it took me 4 hours.
I'm telling you, my first video I put up on YouTube, I think I did 52 separate videos to get that one 10-minute video done.
Right.
It was ridiculous. And now it's rarely more than 2 or 3, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the only difference is my stress level. I'm just not stressing about it anymore.
And I think that comes across. I think when we come across, like when we're more relaxed and we're not like, okay, I'm at take number 60. I'm going to get it right now. Hi.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Well, you could probably just go on and on, but I'm going to focus us to our topic for the day, which is, what is a healthy relationship? You want to take a stab at that?
Whoa. Right. You know what? It took me a really long time to get to healthy relationship. A really, really long time. So I didn't find healthy relationship until I turned 52. I turned 52 the month after I met a person who I could be healthy with. And it's interesting that I say that because what it took to get there was getting this healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So my definition of what healthy relationship is really being able to bring your full self, to be present and not bring your history into the day-to-day interactions. And to be able to, and this is counterintuitive, to be able to put yourself first, to allow your partner to put themselves first, and to merge that in a way that both people are happy. Right? I think that there's a lot of, especially in the area that I work in, there's a lot of misconception that say, I need to compromise for a healthy relationship. I need to compromise. And usually that means I'm going to compromise my needs so that the relationship can last. And that's not it. Healthy is, I'm going to bring my needs to the table. This other person will bring their needs to the table, and we're going to make it a win-win. But in my understanding, that means that I have to take care of myself first, and my partner needs to do the same thing. And there has to be trust that it's going to be mutually beneficial, because every relationship has conflict. Every single relationship, because it's impossible to have the exact same needs as your partner. But when you do have conflict, say, okay, something's happening right now. What is it? What is it that I really need? What have I communicated? Am I communicating it clearly? And a curiosity and openness about the same thing about your partner without making assumptions. That's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't make it in one sentence, but that's healthy.
Oh, no. We got plenty of time.
That's good, because that was not a soundbite.
I love it, because I think that we need to be talking in general more about what a healthy relationship is, because when I left home, I had no clue, right? And I got married the first time when I was 18 without any kind of concept of what a healthy relationship could look like. Yeah. And if you don't even know what you could work towards, how can you create it?
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting question. I left my home the first time when I was 23 to get married. And I got married because I believed I was raised Mormon, and I was like a super good Mormon, and 23 is old maid age.
In the Mormon community,
yeah. And so I really thought I was getting too old, and I had just ended a relationship where somebody was like really not listening to my boundaries at all. and, you know, crying over him and just feeling awful. And somebody else was coming in who had been trying to call while I was out with guy number one, and I never called him back. I finally called him back. That relationship wasn't any better. Not any better. But it's because the template for what relationships should look like was in here. And it involved me putting everyone else's emotional needs ahead of my own. So when I got married the first time, I was a people pleaser and had this, you know, the Disney princesses give their whole identity to being there. They do. Their whole identity is to be the wife and have Prince Charming. And that's what I went into my first marriage with. And it did not work. I like,
didn't work?
Oh,
really?
No. He didn't come home singing to me every night. What are you talking about?
Oh my goodness. How dare he?
I know. I know.
Sweep you off your feet and help you to live happily ever after, you know?
Right. But, yeah. But I brought all of the internal noise from the family I grew up in. Right. And so I spent 14 years trying to pretzel myself into the configuration that would get him to love me. So I changed myself and then look and go, do you love me now? No. Okay. Change again. Do you love me now? No. Okay. Change again. You love me now? And after 14 years of that, I went, you're never going to love me. Okay. Two things. First of all, my self-love can't be based on what somebody else is doing or thinking about me. Secondly, I can't change my happiness by focusing on somebody else's responses. That has to come from in here. But I never learned that at home. Right?
Yeah, me neither. I never learned that at home either.
Right.
You know, and I married a man who was very much like my mother, but I, at the time, saw him, you too. I saw him as someone who would scare my mother. That was my selling point at 18.
He was going to rescue you from your mom by intimidating her.
Yes.
That's a brilliant plan.
You know, he showed up in a leather jacket and a motorcycle. You know, I thought he was pretty scary. Big Marine guy. But yeah, I just ended up going from the frying pan into the fire. You know, that did not work out the way I thought. Though I do have two beautiful, amazing sons from that marriage, so it wasn't all that, you know.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah,
and thanks to my choosing him, they're very athletic.
Oh, that's good too.
They didn't get that from my side of the family. We're more thinking, you know. We're not really athletic in my family. Even though my dad did play college basketball in the Philippines. He was center. Guess how tall he is, or he was?
5'7".
No, a little taller. He was 5'10".
Oh.
But I think that most of their athletic ability came from their dad, so that was the thing. What was I going to ask you about? Oh, you're growing up Mormon. I mean, I feel like a lot of people never really take a step back from their upbringing and realize how much their culture and their religion influenced their choices.
Oh, that's a good question. You know what? I actually, I was born in the church, and I think that it was a thing that was a lifeline for me for a long time. So when I realized this later working with my own body history and injuries that have happened for me. But when I was 2, my dad ran me over with a flatbed truck. right across my middle. And
Oh.
yeah. And later I completed the injury. So my diaphragm is paralyzed on the right side. And that, when I was, as an adult, I was laying in bed in the curled up position because it was hurting. And I had a full body memory of being in the same place as a 2-year-old. And in that moment, as a 2-year-old, also having the sensation of not being able to trust those people, my parents. Right? Because, if somebody runs you over, like a 2-year-old doesn't understand accident. Right? And at the same time, from the time I was a toddler, I didn't get nurturing. I got laughed at for sad faces and beaten by my mother. And then my dad would come home and mom would be an emotional wreck. So he would take care of her. And there was nobody ever going, okay, is the baby okay? Is it right? It never happened. So, but as young as 8 years old, you can ask my younger sister, as young as 8 years old, I went, okay, well, I can trust God. And it happened to be the Mormon Church God. And so I was that young and making sure my kids, my brother and sister, who are both younger than me, and I were getting, I said kids.
You were basically your kids.
Yeah. We're getting to church.
Oh, wow.
Right? I was making sure that we were getting to church because I thought, okay, well, I can't trust these parents, but God I can trust, right? Happened to be the Mormon God. And then as time passed, I was such a good Mormon. I read the Book of Mormon twice a year for, let's say, 30 years of my life.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, and I kept journals and I had food storage. I did all of the stuff. And yet I was miserable because the pieces inside of me that were accepting of abusive behavior were reinforced by the church. Because for me, the Mormon Church acts as an intermediary between the person and God. And when there's an intermediary, then that intermediary can say, well, God says this, and you have to follow what we say God is saying, even if in my heart and the relationship with God that I had was going, this isn't good for me, right? And so for me, the process of recognizing, I left the church when I was 41, so about 11 years ago. No, that's a lie.
Not long ago.
No. So here's how it went. I was in an abusive first marriage, emotionally abusive, looked very much like my mother. Left the marriage. Felt compelled to marry again because my understanding was that God would only accept me if I was married. I married a guy who was very much like, he looked like a pillar in the community. I got resources. I got like personal references. What do you think about this guy? Everyone loved him and gave him glowing reports. Behind closed doors, he was a depressive. He was, he threatened suicide, and that's why I didn't leave sooner. He was physically abusive, slammed my head in the trunk of a car. Was abusive to my kids, right? I have 2 adopted kids, abusive to my kids. So I left that and I thought, okay. And around that same time, I was realizing that the things I was learning in church and what I was being told, when you sit alone with the bishop and they tell you God's message for you, and it goes against everything in your body that you're learning about taking care of yourself. Like I was slowly going, okay, this doesn't work. Like I've been believing it my whole life, but it doesn't work. I had prayed the first time when I was 18 and read the Book of Mormon and said, God, if this is real, I'll follow it my whole life. If it's not, show me and I'll find what is. And so it took that long for me to see. He was probably showing me all along, but it took that long for me to see. Right?
It takes as long as it takes.
It takes, yeah. So I actually, I remember standing in my living room and thinking, all right, I'm going to leave the church of my childhood. I'm going to leave hundreds of friends. I'm going to have to start completely over. I won't have any support system. Do I really want to do it? And my answer was, I can't not.
Yeah.
Right? I can't not. So then I left the church, and I thought it was the reason I thought the reason I was in bad relationships was because of the church. And so I thought, that's great. Right? So then I did it again. And so, and this time now it's with somebody who is like a compulsive, whose compulsive sexuality clouded their vision of me completely. So there was a lot of coercion and a lot of telling me who I am that wasn't real or true, but true for that other person. Mm-hmm. And, I say sexually coercive, and a liar, compulsively a liar, like built the relationship based on lies. And so I'm like, all right, it's my picker. I got a broken picker. And so I stayed with him 11 years. And then finally, so all of this time, I'm still answering your question. All of this time, every time, thank you. Every time I have a misstep, or every time I find myself stuck again, I'm not saying, what is it about that person? I'm thinking, okay, what is it in here that has to shift? Because there's something about me that I'm still not getting right. There's something about the way I'm doing this that is still not okay. And I think largely when we're talking about relationships and healthy relationships and how do I move out of an abusive relationship into a healthy relationship, it's all about, what does an abuser look like? How do I know a narcissist? Like everybody talks about narcissists, right? Well, I don't care what a narcissist looks like if nothing in here matches a narcissist. But nobody's talking about that.
Yes.
Right? So I've always been saying, what is it in me that's making me, like in my last relationship, what is it in me that allows me to, I was going to the Orthodox Church. I was trying to find religion, right? I was going to the Orthodox Church and wearing a prayer veil and doing the thing to make my life feel where it should have been spiritually. It wasn't my spiritual home. But then for my partner to come in and say, I never want to see you wearing a prayer veil again, because that's not who you are. You're this, I don't know, vixen, sexual temptress, not who I was, right? And what is it about me that allowed that to have hegemony, to allow it to have more truth for me than what I hold in here? Mm-hmm. That was the piece that I had to unravel, so that my truth became the most important truth about me, because that's what it is, right? We can't let somebody else define us. But abusive spiritual communities, abusive relationships, abusive families all separate us from our own core. Mm-hmm. And moving back to our core and learning how to find the truth that's in our core versus listening to the lies that trauma creates in our core is a skill as well. It has to be developed. But it really is stepping back and going, okay, wait a minute. I'm not happy here. So what am I doing that contributes to that?
And why is this okay with me? I've been in, a few very unhealthy relationships in my life. And that question has always come up, like, why am I allowing this right now? And slowly over time, I recovered to a place where I used to call it, my line keeps moving. So the line of what I considered acceptable kept moving over time until I wasn't okay with anyone mistreating me. And the ways in which people could mistreat me got smaller and smaller, So when I was a kid, it was, as long as they don't hit me, it's okay. And then over time it became, oh, I don't want anybody yelling at me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, oh, I don't want anybody who says anything disrespectful to me. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's been a process,
I think it always is a process. I think one of the reasons I do the work I do is because I spent fully 30 years in bad relationships. 30 in 3 different relationships. And I think, right, it's like, it's too late. It's not too late. It's delightful to be almost 55 and be in a just scrumptious, happy relationships where my partner says, one of the first things he said to me that sort of scrambled my brain was, you have to put yourself first. Who are you?
That's hysterical. I love it. Yeah, well, I'm telling myself that like all day, every day, right? And so I hope that, when I get another opportunity, it'll be really easy for me to make the decision about whether they're the right person or not.
Well, it's interesting because when I'm looking now at healthy versus not healthy and sort of my own journey of the last 30 years, like I am being listened to in a way that I've never been listened to before. I have a developmentally delayed adult daughter. She's 27 years old and she lives in a regional center group home because she has to have 24/7 supervision. Mm-hmm. And she's attachment disordered. So like I made the decision to place her when her mental health and my well-being were both spiraling down so badly that other people were saying, Tamara, you're not helping her. What are you doing? You guys got to do something different. So I made the placement, and that has been its own growth process by far. But I still have guilt about that, adopt a child and feel guilty. And so this morning he was saying to me, I want to ask you this honest question. I'm like, okay. And he said, do you want to go see your daughter because you're honestly excited about it? Or are you doing it out of a sense of obligation? Because I see that every time you go and see her, it drains you. And I really do want you to take care of yourself. It's not okay to let that drain you. Right? So he asks me this question this morning before breakfast. I'm like, all right. And then I was able to tell him things that I've never told anyone about my dream for being a mother. That's not the dog.
It's the dog and my son. It's okay. Just leave her. Leave her.
Leave her? Okay.
Yeah.
So I was able to ask, I was able to tell him about my guilt, about how I don't want her to feel abandoned, how I feel like when she seemed normal, the last time she seemed kind of normal, she was about 7 before her first psychotic break. She heard her first voices when she was 4. So there's a part of me as a mother that like interacts with this 27-year-old with hope that somewhere in there's a 7-year-old or a 4-year-old that I knew. Right. But that's a partner asking a really hard question and eliciting some very sensitive, tender feelings and not having the answers, but having it be okay. And I think that one of the things that we expect in relationship that's healthy is that, it's all shiny and happy. It's not. There are things that are difficult. But, instead of facing life, people who are in relationships that are not healthy end up having life coming at them and having to deal with this thing that happens between them. And when it's healthy and supportive, you have this bond, and then whatever life brings, the two of you face together, right? And then the bond strengthens your ability to face, like this morning, feelings I've never spoken to anyone about, right? So I think that it is a progression. took me 30 years. It probably wouldn't have taken as many if I hadn't been, a Mormon, always say yes, never say no person, right? Because that's what they teach, is you can't say no. But yeah, it's definitely I think the big idea is just don't compromise yourself, your real needs. A healthy relationship is an actual piece of active work.
Yeah.
Did I just go on a tangent?
Oh no!
Okay, good.
This is all of a piece. I think
Okay,
we're
good.
talking about healthy relationships and how we get there.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you're alone in that feeling like you couldn't say no. I think that's way bigger than the Mormon religion. I think that it's common in a lot of religions. At least the colonizer religions all have that in common.
Well, how could they have succeeded without it?
Right? Because it was very important that they keep the women down, because we're the ones who bear life. And so if they can control us, they can control everything, basically. So I really think there's a lot of people, not just women, but I think a lot of women really relate to this, feeling like they couldn't ever say no, that it wasn't okay. And I remember my first boyfriend in college. This is after my first marriage in college. He was the first person I was with who introduced the idea of boundaries to me. Like, in my family, there were no boundaries. None. And he said to me one time, because I got upset because he said no about going somewhere with me, he said, if I can't say no to you, I can't say yes to you either. And I was like, what? That kept me thinking for days. I was like,
oh yeah,
what does that mean? Like, what? And it's really true. If we can't say no, we can't really be with anyone, because we're being with them out of obligation, coercion, some other reason.
Fear.
Right?
Yeah.
And all those reasons prevent us from being fully present.
Yes. Yep. Well, and actually, if you think about it, we learn that in the family we grow up in. Like, if you're a family with no boundaries, right? But let's talk a little bit about families like mine, where there was harm happening. I would have never said no to my mother, because that's like a death sentence. Like, you don't do that. And I remember my sister, who's 6 years younger than me, had like this temper, but she wasn't getting hurt. It was me. Right. And so when she was 4 years old, this little kid was 4 freaking years old. She looked at my mom and she said, no, I'm running away. So she put her bear and her favorite blanket in a wagon and took off down the street. Right?
That's so great.
Right? Right. But she also didn't learn how to say no. Because when we are children in a home where we're witnessing someone else being abused, we learn vicariously that saying no means somebody's going to get hurt. And so, like, we got a lot of places. It's church, it's the families we grew up in, that tell us not okay to say no.
Yeah. Yeah. It gets reinforced multiple places, and it almost takes crisis to motivate us to change that, because it's not mainstream yet. It's becoming mainstream, but in actual practice, I don't think it's mainstream yet.
Well, I think the actual practice, actually for myself in healing my own complex PTSD, every time you have an event where you have to say no and it's scary, or somebody doesn't accept your no, that's an external event that reinforces this idea that saying no is dangerous. But when you have complex PTSD, you also have, every time you think about saying no being scary, you've reinforced that it's dangerous. So, right? So it's like we get these loops of reinforcement in our brain. And unless we know exactly how to take that and go, okay, this is a trauma habit I need to change. I'm going to stop being afraid of it. Unless we know how to make that happen systematically, we get stuck. And most of us are not raised by awake parents, right? Who understand how to create a human that grows up without being afraid of something, without reinforcement loops that just automatically play. Yeah, it's fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, part of my recovery has been getting to watch my kids as adults navigate their personal and professional lives in ways that are just so free and easy compared to my journey through adulthood, or into adulthood and then through adulthood. Like, I really struggled a lot. So it's been really healing to watch my kids, you know, be in healthy, stable relationships, and, you know.
You've been able to learn from them.
Well, yeah, and also just really enjoy that, you know, because I mean, I haven't met my life partner with whom I could have a healthy relationship yet. I'm not even where you're at yet, right? And we're the same age. So actually, I might be a year older. I'm going to be 56 in August.
I'll be 55 next month.
Oh, okay. So we're a year apart. But I still haven't met that person yet. So it's all just theoretical for me that I could have this, you know? So I've really gotten a lot of enjoyment from watching my kids have it, you know, and other people. But I really haven't met that many other people having very healthy relationships. I mean, there's a spectrum, right? So, you know, I don't think any of them are wholly healthy or wholly unhealthy, right? But I don't see a lot of them, unfortunately.
Well, and you know what? I don't think it's that common. Like I think, like, honestly, if we want to talk about some sort of spiritual influence or something, I think that I've been, I don't know, maybe I've burned off enough karma after 52 years of suffering with complex PTSD and working really hard to heal myself. But I haven't, I like, honestly, if something happens to him, I don't think I'll partner again, because a relationship where it like powers so much growth and there's so much nurturing and it's completely safe and very connected, I think is like it's a very rare opportunity, honestly.
Interesting. Let me think about that. I mean, my intuition is saying you're probably right, but I don't want to believe that, because, you know, I want to believe that there's all kinds of healthy relationships possible for people out there, you know, but maybe not as things stand, you know.
I will tell you that in the work that I've done with couples, I've helped people. So here's a myth. It's a myth. People think that so when somebody has complex PTSD, we have something called emotional flashbacks. And an emotional flashback is where my body is in a certain time and place, and I'm in a specific situation, and my brain is telling me that I'm in a different time that was dangerous. So I'm reacting to the danger instead of reacting in the here and now. So people who have complex PTSD believe that only happens to people with complex PTSD. I'm here to tell you it happens to everyone. It happens to everyone. And I've worked with plenty of couples where they come to me in so much conflict and so much pain because they're both doing that. And they don't know how to navigate it together to heal it together. Right? And so there are ways to go from that terrible place to learning how to work through those old things together to be able to stay present in the moment with each other. I just happened to find a partner who understands how to do that I didn't have to teach them. Right? And I already came having worked through a lot of my own stuff, so I know how to do my own work. But what I tell couples who I'm working with is the healthiest relationships are the relationships where both people do their own work.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like I hit a jackpot because I met somebody who already knows how to do his work. And it happens that his work and my work is very complementary, and it's like an explosion of good. Right. But I think that when we meet somebody and there's a good connection and both people are willing to do the work, their own work, I'm not going to try to change you to make you fit my relationship. But if I can do my own work and you can do your own work, then we can create that. So I think it can be created, but I think also there's way too much settling happening.
Yes, I was talking to a friend yesterday about how in the last 2 years, I've had a lot of first dates. That's what I've had. I have had 0 relationships and many first dates because I refuse to settle anymore. I'm not doing it. It really doesn't take me very long to figure out whether we're going to be a good match or not, you know?
Yeah.
So if at the end of the first date, I'm like, no way, this isn't going to work, I just say, well, thank you very much. And I don't call back, right? That's my thing. And so that's how it's been. And I'm pretty sure that if the opposite ever happens, I'll recognize it, right? But that's just how it's been. And I think that there are moments like during COVID, I definitely had many moments where I rethought my determination not to settle ever again. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was missing that like physical intimacy. But, you know, it's fine. It's fine. I would much rather be alone than settle again. I don't want to.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, the first thing the first clue I had was, is that he kept his word. He said what he was going to do, and he did it. So we had our first phone call, and he said, I'll call you tomorrow. And I hung up going, all right, whatever you say, I know how this goes. He called me the next day. I'm like, oh, and then kept keeping his word. And I think it takes evolvement for that.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I remember hearing that, something similar to that from my middle son one time. He was telling me how he decided whether people were trustworthy when he was dating them. And he said he would, you know, watch what they did. And then he would also kind of check in with them about things that they said they were going to do to see if they actually did them. And I was like, wow. I mean, I never thought like that when I was his age.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, it's, yeah, I'm really happy that he is able to do that and was able to really naturally as a young person, you know.
Well, that's him listening to himself.
Yeah, because I mean, he grew up in a house where that was okay, you know, and actually expected. Like I wanted my kids to, you know, always listen to themselves first, you know.
Well, I think that's the key to dating. So like you have a first date and you're like, thank you very much. Oh, you've been listening to yourself? Okay, then maybe the first date is enough.
Yeah.
Right. For you to know that. Right. Right.
Exactly. But trust, I think, is probably the core of what makes a healthy relationship. Is this somebody you really can trust with your life?
That's true. I think that's true, and I think that that's developed in stages.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So after 30 years of really terrible relationships, I developed this really good survival strategy. It also started from home, right? But my really good survival strategy was to look at you and go, yeah, okay, and then go do my own thing.
Oh, that's funny.
So you think I've heard you, but then if you watch and you see I'm doing my own thing, you're like, sure. But that passed most of my relationship partners. One of them said to me, you're my wife and you have to listen to me. And my answer was, you're my husband. You're supposed to listen to God. You're not doing that. So go do my own thing. So now I'm in this relationship with this trustworthy partner who I know loves me and wants to keep me safe and all that stuff. And I'm doing the same thing. I'll go, and then I go do my own thing. And he called me on it. Dang it.
You noticed?
He noticed. Yes. So then, because he noticed that and he called me on it, I was able to go, oh, that's a trauma habit I've used to keep myself safe for years. But I don't want you to feel like I don't hear you. And so I've stopped and I intentionally listen. And I'm working on the habit of going, and running. So that means, what does it mean? It means when he talks to me, I put my cell phone down, right? It means that when he says stuff, I take the time to register it in my head. And when I was processing it, what he told me that night, I actually shed some tears over it and went, oh, this is me not being vulnerable and not having trust. Sue, we're 2 years in. So I've been doing my own thing, going, and doing my own thing for 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the trust level and the ability to be vulnerable and learn that after safety is a sense of security, right? That's as a relationship takes you deeper. But it starts with, you said the other day you were going to clean your house. Did you clean your house? Right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Is that your puppy?
That is my puppy who insisted on being back here. And you want to get in the screen? Come on. Let's go. Come on up. I gave her an opportunity.
She didn't take it.
I was thinking we should probably wrap up soon, but I wanted to ask if you'd be comfortable sharing a little bit of how you were able to leave your abusive relationships, because I think that's a question people have a lot when they're involved in abusive relationships. How do I get out of here?
Yeah. So in childhood, when we're in relationship in home, at our home, usually we're in a situation that is threatening us, our safety, our very survival. And a child, to get through that, has to shut down and get into pleasing behaviors or whatever the behaviors are that work in that specific situation. And then the first thing is that when we leave home, we have to recognize that we're not leaving home because it's still in here. And then we have to get ourselves to stay aware. So in childhood, we shut down as a survival strategy. And that same survival strategy will move with us into a abusive relationship. A child is looking to the most dangerous parent and going, how do I please you so you won't hurt me? And then in an abusive relationship, the adult in an abusive relationship goes, how do I make sure that I can please you so that I can stay safe? And that shift, the shift that has to happen is first awareness of that. Oh, I'm again not paying attention to what's happening in me. That's the first piece, is the not shutting down. And it's interesting because I've worked with women who have had like in abusive relationships, and they're like, how do I take care of my own needs? And literally these people who don't take care of their own needs will hold their pee all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so where do they start? I always start by saying, pay attention to how often you have to pee and stop putting it off. And our bodies are really interesting because we can either shut everything down or feel everything, but we can't shut off certain feelings and not others. So if we start paying attention, well, yeah, you know what? I'm going to stop holding my pee all day. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to stop whatever it is and go to the bathroom when I need to. That usually tends to open up a process of more awareness of what my own needs are in my body. It also opens up more conflict, but, you know, like awareness of the conflict. But when we start having awareness of that conflict, that's when we can start going, wait a minute, what's making sense here? Did I really cause this person to feel that way? Or are they just saying that to keep me in this place where they can get anything from me without any resistance? But it starts like, the most simple way to say is like, pay attention to how often you need to pee versus how often you actually do it. Pay attention to how often you eat, or how long do you let yourself go hungry before you eat. So
yeah, I like that. I worked with a lot of people in abusive relationships over the years too, and I found that starting with small, indirect interventions that are empowering is the best way to go. There was a young woman I worked with a long time ago who was with a severely abusive person, and she mentioned she had always wanted to learn how to drive. And so I taught her how to drive. That was the main thing I focused on for several months, because it was the getting up the nerve and then doing the thing. And, about 6 months after she learned how to drive, she was driving away.
Of course she was. Yes.
It was amazing. And for me, when I was trying to distance myself from my first husband, I actually I insisted to him that we needed to go to couples therapy. So we went, and he went to 2 sessions and then said he got up all angry. This is bullshit, and he stormed off, right? And the therapist said something to me that was really impactful. She said, in my experience, when people are in couples therapy and one person leaves, sorry about Esmeralda here. One person leaves, and the other person stays in therapy, that the relationship changes anyway.
Yep.
Because if you're working on your stuff, it's going to change. Yep. And so I stayed, and that was huge. It was huge. And it was probably another year before I actually moved on that, separation. But it was really important, really important. My staying attached to a therapist, even though my husband refused.
And your therapist is probably helping you stay attached to you, which I think is the key. Like staying attached to yourself and not allowing one of the ways that actually abusive, angry men, like there's a book by Lundy Bancroft called Why Does He Do That? It's a classic, amazing book for people who are trying to figure out how to get out and they're stuck. But one of the things that an abusive person will do is they'll work hard to separate you from your own feelings. Because if they can separate you from, wait a minute, what you're telling me doesn't feel good to me. If they can separate you from that, then they can get you to do anything they want you to do. So it's about reconnecting with yourself and staying there.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
It's amazing.
Good.
These journeys.
It might have taken me a long time, but eventually I really fell head over heels in love with myself. So,
and I think that how do you love somebody else if you can't love yourself?
That's what RuPaul says at the end of every drag race. Oh, when I do the clips, I'll have to throw that in.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'm a big RuPaul fan, and I really believe that. And I heard it, a million times before it actually happened for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was a long process to get to where I felt, really in love with myself. I had to start with just kind of being okay with myself.
Yeah.
It was a progression.
It's always a progression. Yesterday we were in these beautiful, I think my YouTube channel is going to take a shift because we're always traveling. Yesterday we were in this beautiful like cathedrals made of sand.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, and we got to this part where there was a wind tunnel and the wind tunnel was blowing and I'm like, oh, this is where there should be a model shoot. So I started like dancing and like, you know how they do, the models do when they have a wind fan. And of course I'm not, and I'm a lot more awkward than that, but it was really fun. Like going, oh, this is me, a model in the wind tunnel. And you know what? That kind of fun, being in love with yourself enough to look stupid and have it be delightful. Yeah, that's what we're searching for. It really is.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I want to share this one little thing before we wrap up because I know from experience that there's always somebody watching that really needs this. So these are the ways you can contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
Oh,
you can call 1-800-799-7233, or you can go on the website and just hit chat and somebody will be there, or you can text them too.
And the thing about this hotline and about advocates is that they will help you safety plan to get out. They will help you figure out resources to plan for it. They'll help you, usually they can help you find free therapy resources close by. Sorry to interrupt, but it's an amazing resource.
No, please. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think, part of why I'm so passionate about, whoops, I was trying to remove it. Part of why I'm so passionate about doing this YouTube thing, come on up, you goofball, is
she wants you to herself. She wants you to herself.
Oh, yeah. Part of why I'm so passionate about doing this YouTube thing is I feel like it gives us access to so many more people than we'd encounter out in the real world,
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And I feel like the first step to my recovery from abusive relationships was reaching out, and hearing that recovery was possible. So.
Mm-hmm. And it absolutely is. Yeah.
All right, Hopeful Tribe. We'll see you again next time. Thank you so much for coming, Tamara.
Thanks.
I really appreciate it. And I hope you'll come back next month.
You know what? I have such a great time talking with you. And so I would love to come back next month.
Cool. You heard it here first. We're going to be back next month.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.